We're going to talk about preparing Ableton for a set of worship today. So when you open up Ableton, you should see this screen. First thing you don't need is this second MIDI column, so we can delete that. Now if you don't see the screen at all, you might see this screen, which is called the arrangement view. We want the session view, so you can use the tab button to go between them. This is the session view, this is the arrangement view. We want to be in this view with the columns going down. Okay, and we've got a reverb and delay channel. We also don't need those, okay? And we'll make this master channel nice and big. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is bring in our backing track. So you need to navigate to the link that I've sent you, which is the KXC backing tracks link. Find these. This is the list of all the stuff that we've got. Let's go into new songs 2021. It's exciting. And Amy Dolly's banger, Light of Peace. Let's go for this one. If you're presented with a couple of options, you always want to go for the formatted version, because that's something that I've kind of put together that has things in the correct format. And you want to kind of select everything and hit the download button. Okay, once that's downloaded, you'll have the tracks on your desktop, and it's time to drag these into Ableton. So you can drag it, and I just tend to do Apple tab to find the Ableton app. And here we go. Now, if you just drag and drop them, they'll all go into the same column. And this is going to be no good for us, because what we actually want is we want this top. We do things in rows, okay? So each song is going to be a different row. We've got all of these audio files, so click, cue, percussion, guitars, they're all kind of going down in columns. We actually want them to be across the row. So I'm going to undo that, and this time I'm going to drag them in. And before I release, I'm going to press my Apple button, my command button, and now you'll notice it does exactly what we want. There's one more thing that I haven't told you about, so again I'm going to undo that. Before you even do that, you need to go into preferences, and this is absolutely critical. You've got to turn this auto warp long samples off. What this does is, if it's a long sample, if this is on, then it will warp it. We are going to warp our samples. I'll explain what that is and how to do it, but we're going to do it manually, so we do not want that to be auto, so set that to off. Okay, and now we can do the same thing again, holding down that command key, and these files are in. Let's now come over to our master column. This is where we're going to name our song. So right click, rename, Light of Peace. And also we want to put in our tempo here. So go back to our file. On the click file should always be the tempo 80 BPM, or in the actual click file that's come in to the session 80 BPM. So I'm going to write 80 BPM, and also I'm going to write the time signature, which is 4/4. Press enter. Now Ableton magically detects the tempo and the time signature from this name here. So I'm going to launch this, what's called a scene, which is this whole row, and it's going to launch all the files and start playing music. You always must use this little play button here. Never use the spacebar to start it, because strange things will happen. You can use the spacebar to stop it, but never use the spacebar to start it. You have to launch by pressing this play button here on the master scene. So I launch that.
2, 3,
and you'll
4.
hear it going. Okay, great. I'll press the spacebar to stop. Before we had the tempo, so let me just talk you through this bar at the top. We've got the tempo here, which is 120 at the moment. We've got the time signature at 4/4, and then this is the metronome button, which is on or off. We'll leave that off for now. At the moment, this is 120 BPM. But when I launch this scene, carefully watch what happens here. When I launch the scene, it snaps to 80, which is exactly what I've told Ableton to do. And now, and only now, the master tempo is at the correct setting, 80 BPM. I can now begin to warp these. I'm going to warp these things. I'm going to show you how to do that, and then afterwards I'll explain what that is. So double click on one of these scenes and you'll see the audio sample. In fact, I can go through and double click on each of these, and you can see the kind of waveform. What I want to do is select all of them. So I'm going to select to the top one, and then with my shift button held down, I click on the last one and it selects all of them. And I'm going to warp all of these in one go. Okay, so I come down here and there's a little warp button. Now this is currently showing me the settings of where it says all 7 clips, and I'm going to warp all 7 clips, and that little yellow light comes on, and that's great. They've all now been warped, and if I click on an individual one, they've been warped. Okay, so each of these has now successfully been warped. What the warp button does is it analyzes the audio file and basically lines them all up with 80 BPM as the starting point, and it basically means I can increase the tempo, and it will increase them all uniformly and at the same rate, which is very, very useful. Sometimes you want to do tracks slower or faster, and it also is going to help me when I transpose them as well, which I'll come on to in a bit. So for argument's sake, let's say we actually want to do this track at 85 BPM. Okay, so I type in 85 BPM into the master track and hit go, and because I've warped them, it will
Intro,
warp.
2, 3, 4.
And now it's playing back the track exactly as was, but at 85 BPM now. Let's just talk quickly about this click track. So this individual click track, I'm going to actually solo this channel. So down here is, each one of these is kind of like a mixing strip. So I'm going to solo the click track and launch it. So yeah, all we're hearing is the click track. Now, instead of just the click track, this is the click file for this particular song, Light of Peace. But there's also a global click track, which is this thing up here, and this is kind of like Ableton's built-in click track. Okay, and if it's highlighted yellow, then it's playing. And now when I play this, hopefully you'll be able to hear kind of both clicks are overlaid. And I tend to leave this yellow button on. It's nice to just have both clicks playing. What it also means is if I want to do another song which doesn't have any tracks to it, but I still want to have a click track. So let's say the next song I want to do is 10,000 Reasons. We're going to do this in 76 BPM and 4/4. What it means is if I press play, hopefully we should be able to just, even if I don't have the click file, we can still use the inbuilt click for the whole system. Now, I pressed that and nothing happened. That's because there's nothing in any of these boxes on this row. So in my MIDI track here, this is why I've got a MIDI track, a blank MIDI track. I'm just going to double click, and basically it's like a fake MIDI region, and it means that now at least there is something. And so when I press play, Ableton knows that there's something to do, and so it plays that metronome. If this is unhighlighted, then no metronome will play, but as soon as I highlight it again, we hear a metronome. Great, and if you're feeling kind of spicy, you might want to colour code these tracks in red or something, whatever colour you choose. The last thing I want to show you is transposing, which is another really important part of what we do. So Light of Peace typically I think is in F major, so I can add that to the description in the track, and that's helpful just so you can keep tabs on what's going on. Now I actually want to change this. I want to transpose this up a couple of semitones. In fact, I'm going to transpose it up 4 semitones to A major, so you can hear a real difference. Now let's launch the scene. Oh, I've soloed this at the moment, so I've got to unsolo it. That still sounds the same as we had before. Okay, obviously it's at 85 BPM now because we've got that in the master channel. How do I transpose it? Well, I firstly highlight the clips that I want to actually change. Okay, so the click I don't need to transpose. The cues I don't need to transpose. The percussion, as long as it's not melodic, as long as it doesn't have a pitch, I don't need to transpose it. But these other ones I do. So I'm going to highlight all 4 of these: guitars, synths, lead and bass. Okay, and now if I come down here, it says I've got 4 clips highlighted, and I simply just transpose up 4 semitones to A major. Now let's launch this.
Intro, 2, 3, 4.
Now hopefully you're able to hear there's some fairly spicy, funky things going on. One of the reasons for that is because we're in the wrong transpose mode. Okay, so I need to again highlight all 4 of those clips, and you'll see there's this drop down menu here, and I need to select complex. Okay, Beats each of these is a different algorithm as to how to transpose it. We need to be in complex. Let's have another listen.
Intro, 2, 3, 4.
That is actually much better to my ear. Okay. Finally, if you've got any BVs, I don't have any BVs in this particular track, in this particular song. Sorry, but if you do, often we'll use Complex Pro. The reason for that is you get a few more parameters that you can change, particularly this formants thing, and this is something that you can change. And let's just highlight this piano. This piano can be quite like a vocal, same kind of register. Let's listen. Now I'm going to change these formants, hopefully you'll be able to hear. Now you probably can't hear the exact what's going on there, and to be honest neither can I, but I can tell that something different is happening, and I think formants at 0 there sounded particularly natural, but that's not always the case. Often I maybe stick them at 50%, and if you're transposing by many semitones, so maybe up 6 or down 5, then you need to kind of experiment with these formants and see what sounds most natural. Remember, this is for vocals, okay, so if you've got gang vocals or BVs. Fantastic. We've got our 2 tracks here. We've got our first one, which is we've changed the tempo and we've changed the key, and this second track, which is just a click, okay, and you build up the rest of your set. I would always encourage you to, in advance, put the whole of your set in advance, because you won't have time on the day and it can be quite stressful, so make sure you get things loaded up in advance. You need to save this, and you obviously need to save a live set, and you can do that, but importantly you need to do this thing called collect all and save. What that does is that any files that you've brought in, so we brought in those backing tracks, didn't we, it saves them to the actual project rather than looking for the files where we originally dragged them in from. This is important because if you happen to rename your folder where you brought them in from, or if you're using a external hard drive, or you're transferring the session from one computer to another, you need the files to be within the session. So collect all and save, hit OK, and it will think about it for a moment. It's also asking me if I want to save the session, and I do, so I'm just going to call this Sunday, and maybe the date, 22nd of August, and it takes a little while, and it's saved. And that's it. Thanks very much.